What's up, ladies and gentlemen? This is JU with GoaledMinds.com. Early morning, just wanted to talk about the Genaddy Golovkin Daniel Jacobs fight. A lot of controversy over this fight, and it's you know I had to speak on it. I'm hearing a lot of stuff that that I think is just it's not being balanced out with the truth. So first of all, if you don't know, Genaddy Golovkin pulled out a unanimous decision. Two judges had it 115-112. The third judge had it 114-113. Unanimous decision for Triple G, Genaddy Golovkin. I had it after going back. I watched the fight twice. I watched it at a birthday party slash fight party and a little inebriated. So I went and watched it again the very next morning. And to be honest, I scored the fight even more decisively for Genaddy. I had him winning, the first time I watched it. I was definitely wrong on my prediction. Daniel Jacobs made it past the sixth round. And I'll get into a little bit of why I think that was even possible for him. But I did have it when I first watched it. I was like, wow, that was really close. I think Genaddy edged it out. There was people who were at the fight party that were like, Danny Jacobs won. And I didn't believe him at the time. I was like, what are you talking about? But whatever. Watched it again the next day, and then I realized how even more decisively Genaddy Golovkin won. I did my best to give rounds to Daniel Jacobs. I could see the 115-112 that the first two judges had, but trying to give rounds to Daniel Jacobs, I still came up with 114, 113, and I'll break down the actual rounds that I did it in if I can find my paper. Hold on. Hold on, meow cat. Let's see, where did I put it? That's what happens when you're not prepared here. All right, I'll have to try to find it later. I'll have to try to find it later. I apologize, guys. Thought I had it right here at my disposal. I didn't. But anyways, trying to give rounds to Daniel Jacobs, I came up with the 114, 113, still in favor of Genaddy Golovkin, and doing it in that fashion, essentially the knockdown was the deciding factor for trying to give it to Daniel Jacobs. But again, I can see the 115, 112 cards. People yelling that this is a robbery is honestly it's kind of ridiculous. And I'm starting to realize why people think it's a robbery. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play two clips from two different people. Hopefully, first of all, I'm a big fan of both of these channels. One is Ellie Sekback. The other is Boxing Ego. I am a fan of both of these guys. Boxing Ego put out a Genaddy Golovkin versus Daniel Jacobs, the realist breakdown, comprehensive by Boxing Ego, if you want to go check it out. So shout out to him. I don't know this man individually, but I am a fan of his channel. But I do beg to differ on the points that he made. So I'm going to play a little bit of what he said on his channel, kind of going on that. And then there was an interview with Ellie Sekback, and he was talking to Gabriel Rosado, and I truly, truly respect Gabriel Rosado. I think he's a warrior. I think he breaks down fights as honestly as he can from a boxer's perspective, and he gives it to you straight, no chase. So let me start with I'm gonna start with let's see, Gabriel Rosado and kind of what he was telling Ellie Sekback. And then I'm going to play Boxing Ego, and then I'm going to kind of go in from there because I was trying to figure out why people couldn't see what I saw the next fight, why people didn't see what the judges saw, and why there's such a big controversy as to how close it is. And I think I found the answer. So we're going to go ahead and play Gabe Rosado. Hopefully you guys can hear it. So here it is. Hold on.
No, I looked today online, and I see so many reactions to this fight. Bernard Hopkins put up an emoji of like, I can't believe this. LL Cool J put up a ninja with a gun saying boxing judges be like. And then you have fans saying Triple G won easy. You have fans saying Danny Jacobs won easy. There are fans saying Danny Jacobs, if you didn't feel Triple G's power, why do you have sunglasses on? And so on and so forth. How could one fight have so many reactions?
It's because
it was that close.
Triple G is dominant. People are used to seeing Triple G dominate people, and they're used to seeing people. They're used to seeing him drop people. And he fought a guy whose style, didn't allow him to do what he really wants to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, Danny moved a lot. You know what I'm saying? And he used his jab. He's long, he's rangy. You know what I'm saying? He can move. So, you know, the style didn't, you know, it didn't allow Triple G to, you know, be at his best. But honestly, I'm not mad at the decision. If it went to Danny Jacobs, I wouldn't have been mad at that either. Like, you know, it was really a close fight. It's a fight where I gotta watch again and really score it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
with no audio. Don't listen to Max Kellerman and Jim Lampley. Just watch.
All right, so that's what we'll leave it at that. That was Gabe Rosado talking to Ellie Sackbeck, which is ES News. You know, definitely subscribe to them. You know, they always, you know, have some great stuff. But let's play the next one. This is Boxing Ego talking about the fight, okay?
A little bit different. So, to me, I don't think Jacobs, even though he has a second loss, a lot of people, I mean, read the comments. It's not even just me. A lot of people think Jacobs won. And the bottom line is this, and I'm going to be so upfront in this video, like I always am. That was not Golovkin's superior performance. You know what I mean? It was a good, and I'm not saying it wasn't good. He put up a good fight, but I'm really going off of the notion of who he's supposed to be, and who HBO said he was. People are saying he's pound for pound and he's a known knockout artist, and Jacobs is getting knocked out and demolished. You're supposed to get this guy out of here. Let them tell it, but it is what it is,
And so that's Boxing Ego, and I want to keep it quick, you know, as quick as possible. So the reason that I played those two pieces of interview is because there's a reoccurring theme as to why a lot of people think Danny Jacobs won this fight, and that's based off who Genaddy Golovkin is and what his track record is. People aren't saying Danny Jacobs decisively beat him. Most people are saying we're used to seeing Genaddy Golovkin beat people up. So really what happened, in my opinion, is that we finally got to a fighter who did his best to stand up to the boogeyman or the bully, which is Genaddy Golovkin, according to the media. And so because most people are used to seeing Golovkin destroy somebody, when he finally fought who, again, me being a fan of Danny Jacobs, another A-level fighter, when he fought another A-level fighter, and, you know, when two A-level fighters go against each other, a lot of times you get a close stalemate. Manny Pacquiao, Mayweather, you know, a closer fight. Danny Garcia, Keith Thurman, right? These fights that are very stalemate. Style makes fights. So as far as level of excitement, that just depends on the fight. But a lot of times what you get is a really close match. Andre Ward, Sergey Kovalev. And these things can be disputed. And you know, for me, this was another Andre Ward versus Sergey Kovalev. The only difference this time is I believe that the judges got it right. I think Danny Jacobs put on a hell of a performance. But I think, like, and I don't really want to compare the two, but like a lot of, I won't compare the two. We'll leave the other boxer's name out of it. He landed a lot of flashier punches. But if you look at effective aggression, I mean, he was on the ropes a majority of the fight, and Gabe Rosado brought up a great point, and I agreed. I thought the same thing. He said it was kind of frustrating watching Danny Jacobs fight that night because he fought like a straight boxer, not a boxer puncher. He was saying, Daniel Jacobs, you can punch too. You've knocked out 12 of your last opponents, but you didn't fight like you could, nor did you hurt Genaddy Golovkin, but you got dropped. You know what I mean? He was pretty much backpedaling most of the fight, which in my prediction I said he does. He walks straight back into the ropes a lot. And if you really go back and watch that fight, you'll see that Genaddy Golovkin is definitely landing more of the effective punching, effective aggression. He had him going from corner to corner, rope to rope. He rarely was able to keep it in the center of the ring. I think Kell Brook did a better job of keeping it in the center of the ring than Danny Jacobs did. And again, this is not hating Danny Jacobs. Danny Jacobs just put on a great performance. I'm just saying you have to, you know, if you were to watch this boxing match, not knowing either of the fighters' stories, you didn't know Danny Jacobs, you didn't know who Golovkin was, right? And you just really watched it for what it was. Being a fan, I don't want to hear casuals because, man, I ran into some casuals that, you know, it's frustrating to talk to them. But if you know boxing and you watch these two guys for the first time, you didn't know who they were. Take the stories out, the knockout artist that Genaddy's been sold as, Danny Jacobs, who's also been sold as a knockout artist, but minus the Miracle Man and all this stuff, and the fact that he's probably going to get knocked out. You take all these stories and these narratives away, and you just watch it as a boxing match, which I was able to do the next day because, well, we already knew who won. So I was just trying to figure out and, again, try to really give Danny Jacobs some rounds. I mean, it was apparent that he was landing a lot of punches on the gloves, and there's a reason why his face looked different after the fight than Genaddy Golovkin, right? Because he didn't land the amount of punches nor the effective amount of punches that Triple G landed, and it was just apparent. He did some great work to the body. I think he stayed pretty well composed. I think one thing I noticed, there was these moments, and if you watch the fight, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, where he would land a punch on Genaddy Golovkin and he would get pumped. I mean, he would start raging like he was on roids or something. And I'm not accusing. I was just saying it looked like roid rage a little bit. He was pumped up. And I realized, by watching it, I'm like, the reason he's so pumped up is because he hasn't been connecting with those good shots. So when it did happen, it was an exciting moment. But he had been getting worked for most of the fight. In regards to the jab war, Danny Jacobs presented a very good jab that night, but Golovkin presented the better jab. I mean, again, just escorting him from pillar to post. You know what I mean? I mean, he was doing phenomenal work. Now, in regards to the knockdown, he got the knockdown. People are trying to say that the knockdown was Golovkin rushing in. That's ridiculous. I watched the fight now 2 times. I've watched that particular clip 4 times. And Danny Jacobs pulled onto his leg. That's why he literally was grabbing onto him. He hit him with he basically hit him with a jab, an overhand right, and then inside the guard at the same moment hit him with another right before Danny Jacobs could get his hook around. I think he was either trying to throw a hook or a block to block the punch. But he, hold on one second. But which was a beautiful shot. And then as Danny Jacobs went down, because number one, he was caught out of position, like I told you in the breakdown. He squares up a lot when he's on the ropes, so he got caught out of position, got hit. I don't think he was that hurt, but it was a flash knockdown, and it was a legitimate knockdown. He didn't get pushed. He didn't get, he basically pulled Genaddy into him trying to stay up, and that was his fault. He legitimately got knocked down. I will talk about the weight factor. The fact that Danny Jacobs decided to forfeit any possible IBF title by not showing up to the weigh-in, I thought was a little bit janky. You know what I mean? I thought that was a little bit janky because, let's be honest, if he knew he wasn't going to go for it, and I don't hate the fact that, he was trying to get his advantages, but it changed the narrative quite drastically because they didn't talk about it enough. They mentioned it. Oh, he's 180 pounds. Yeah, but nobody was, nobody was really clarifying that Genaddy Golovkin was really a small guy. We're assuming he was 180 pounds, right? Canelo can get to 180 pounds after sucking down to 155. We don't know what Daniel Jacobs was at. They assumed he was at 185. He legitimately, being a true big middleweight, right, weighed in just like, 0.4 under the limit ounces, you know what I mean, or pounds, excuse me. He came in huge. So we know for a fact he was over 170 same day, right? We know that for a fact. With all that time to rehydrate, right, he easily could have been 185, 190. Anyways, for those of you who don't know, okay, now weight for some people, they would think, so what? It's only 10 pounds. That's only 15 pounds. But you're talking at an elite level where this is a game of inches, right? It's just like any other sport, pro football, pro basketball, right? You think about the best athletes in the NBA, for example, you know, formerly Michael Jordans and Kobe Bryant's, now your LeBrons and your Westbrooks, right? What makes them so much more special than the rest of the league? It's that little bit extra that they have, right? That quicker first step, maybe that size that LeBron has, right? If LeBron was the same size as freaking Steve Curry, for example, do you think he'd be as explosive and as big as he would? No, right? Doesn't mean he wouldn't be a great basketball player, but that little bit of size makes a lot of difference, okay? And I say a little bit. LeBron has a lot of size for his position and what he plays. But anyways, that's just a comparison if you watch basketball. All I'm saying is at the elite level, it's a game of inches. So when you have a gentleman weighed in at 170 and then you know, an A-level fighter that weighed in at 170, and then you have an A-level fighter who was supposed to do the same thing, all of a sudden balloon up, you know, and miss that, to totally blow it off, you're held to your standard because you have to keep your belt. You're defending your belt, but that other A-level fighter is now going to blow up to 180, 185, maybe 190, right? And it is possible to blow up 20 pounds. Like I said, we've seen Canelo do it. So if he weighed in at 169, he could easily been 20 pounds heavier. I mean, if he weighed in at we weighed in at 160, but if he skipped the 170, right, limit, he could have easily gained another 10 pounds in that day. So, you know, like I said, he obviously came in big, and I think that's what allowed him to take a lot of Triple G's power. I think it was the best move of the night. You know, he was able to take that power, and I think that's why he got so pumped up, because he realized, man, I'm so much bigger than this dude. Finally, when he you know, when he was able to test Golovkin's power, he realized, yeah, it hurt. You know, he was lumped up, but it's not going to knock me out. I'm too hydrated. He was very rehydrated. And so, you know, like I said, I think it was a little bit janky, but you know, he was going for it. He was giving it his all. And I am a big fan of Daniel Jacobs, so I'm not even going to sit here and hate on that fact. They pulled a card. I thought it was a little bit janky. But like somebody else said, I think it was counter punch boxing. Really, that's not Daniel Jacobs' fault. That's not his team's fault. It's not Genaddy Golovkin's fault. Really, that's Tom Loeffler and K2. They should have put a rehydration clause in the actual fight contract. But again, you know, when you have that size difference, it's a game of inches, man. That's why, you know, Paulie Malignaggi says it all the time. There's weight classes for a reason, because these are elite professional fighters. It's not like, you know, the dude at the bar. Yeah, maybe you can knock out a bigger dude at the bar if you're trained and he's not, right? Size doesn't matter. But when you're talking about you know, elite fighters, there's the saying goes, the great bigger fighter will always beat the great smaller fighter simply because of size. And you know, I don't think Danny Jacobs won, right? Because I think Genaddy Golovkin was the better boxer that night. But that's why there are weight classes, and that's why he wasn't able to knock out Danny Jacobs like he has been for many other fights. I don't think that was the only reason. I think, you know, a lot of people, one thing I really hate is when people start saying, what did you know, Golovkin do wrong? Why wasn't he able to knock him out? Was he having an off night? And it's almost like, bro, like, you can't do, and especially I really can't stand when people who are saying Danny Jacobs won are doing that, because you can't have it both ways, right? You can't say Genaddy Golovkin is a great fighter, and that Danny Jacobs, you know, that he had an off night with Danny Jacobs, and that's why he looked normal, and then go to say that Danny Jacobs put on a spectacular performance and made GGG look like a hype job. It's got to be either or. They're either both hype jobs, right? And, you know, one hype job won over the other, or they're both elite, right? And they nullified each other's true offense. Neither one knocked each other out, right? Danny Jacobs is a knockout artist too. And I think people are really trying to take that away from him, and they're trying to take that away from Genaddy Golovkin, that these are two great fighters, man. They both had an amateur pedigree. And you're trying to really take that away from these fighters. They put on a great show. And again, I think Genaddy Golovkin edged it out. Like I said, I had it 113, 114 when I tried to give it rounds to Jacobs, but I also could see the decisive victory of 112, 115. I think Danny Jacobs had great moments. He had some really great moments where he utilized that uppercut, he utilized that range. I think homeboy, I forget his name, but from the Boxing Voice said it best. I think if he would have just stayed as disciplined as Genaddy Golovkin, he might have really edged that out. He does have the potential to beat him. I think that if they put the rehydration clause into the next fight, if there is a next fight, that Golovkin beats him even more decisively. If he can't rehydrate that bag, he's going to take the punches a lot less well. If there is no rehydration clause, I still think Genaddy Golovkin can win. I think he just has to train different. I think Danny Jacobs can also win. It still would be a 50-50 fight to me. And Danny Jacobs, he proved why it could be a 50-50 fight. I think I earned a lot of respect for that man in this fight. I think his stock rose, in my opinion, but so did Genaddy Golovkin's. This is, he's heading towards Bernard Hopkins' record of 20 title defenses. I think he's on number 18. So you have Billy Joe Saunders and potentially Canelo, or another rematch with Daniel Jacobs for his 20th defense, which would tie Bernard Hopkins. And he's on to some great things, man. I think, again, just kind of going back and really examining why people felt the way they felt, I think it really just boiled down to the fact that people are used to seeing Genaddy Golovkin dominate fighters, and he was in there with an A-level fighter, and he didn't blow him out the water, but he did win the fight. And people seem to have this notion all of a sudden, because he knocked out everybody, that if he doesn't knock out somebody, that it makes him a hype job. Like, what are you talking about? The dude that he fought was just a lot larger than him, and a great fighter on top of that, and he still managed like a champion would. Tyson didn't knock out everybody. You know what I mean? Mayweather knocked out nobody. Manny Pacquiao didn't knock out everybody. You know what I mean? Like, Julio Cesar Chavez Sr., of course, didn't knock out everybody. Controversial wins. I mean, it's just a part of boxing. But I think when you go back and really look at the career, I mean, I think there's a lot of people that are sitting on the fence and say, hey, it could have gone either way. And, I wouldn't be mad at that. I'm not one of those people. I think Genaddy Golovkin took this victory. I think Daniel Jacobs, like I said, put up a great fight, and I really take my hat off to him. I really salute that fighter. Because he came in there with a game plan, a strategy. You can tell his team came in there with a strategy, and they did their best to execute it, and it proved to be a great show. But again, I think what Gabe Rosado said was the fact that he was always on the ropes. Again, people tried to say that he had ring generalship. Like, no, he was against the ropes for a majority of the fight. That's how he got knocked down. He would end up in the corner. He would sometimes get a chance to spin off. He had some moments where he could dictate the pace. But overall, round by round, if you really added them up, Golovkin controlled more of the rounds. And his punches were more effective, and I'm sure that the judges ringside saw that. And I think one of the big arguments too, and I think one of the things that really tainted this fight was the Chocolatito, whatever the Thai dude, I forget his name, because that to me was a complete robbery. Okay. That was a true robbery. Chocolatito got knocked down, but he came back to win that fight. Pretty much everybody said. And so I think because you had that fight before this Jacobs fight, then the hype around Golovkin, he didn't knock out Daniel Jacobs, and people are like, oh, these judges are just janky tonight. It gives a bad narrative to the whole night. But this is just my opinion. Again, I'm definitely not a Daniel Jacobs hater. Because like I said, his stock rose in my book, but so did Golovkin's. There's a lot of talk about whether Golovkin's age is getting to him. I think that would be the natural understanding, but I don't think it's necessarily true. I think you just had two top fighters. I think you had a fighter that just usually blows competition out of the water, really decimates him, and it didn't happen one time, and it doesn't make him not a great fighter, because I think he still won the fight against a very tough opponent who had every attribute on him. He was probably faster than him. He was taller than him. He was longer than him. He was bigger than him, more hydrated than him, and still came out with the victory. So, I mean, to me, in my opinion, that just, throws Genaddy Golovkin up a notch in my book as well. Yeah, if you're hollering robbery, you got to be hollering robbery. For the Kovalev Ward fight. I mean that would be the same. Well, no, they're probably the same fans that think Ward actually won the first fight against Sergey Kovalev, or the only fight. And I'm not one of those fans either. I think Andre Ward came back to rally just like Danny Jacobs did, finished the rounds strong. But overall, round by round, control using the jab, I think he lost that fight as well. I think the Golovkin win was more decisive than Sergey Kovalev's. I think that, when I went back and rescored the Andre Ward Sergey Kovalev fight, I could see a draw. I could see a draw in that fight. I can see that happening. But this fight, I didn't get a draw. Not with the knockdown, and that was me trying to give Daniel Jacobs his props. And like I said, it's not like I'm super biased in this. I did go for Genaddy to win, and he did win. But I do feel like if I were to go back and watch a fight, I can admit when it's a loss. And it's just like me. Most people know I'm a big Pacquiao fan. The first gym I ever trained in boxing out of was Wild Card Gym because of that. And so when the Mayweather Pacquiao fight happened, I was definitely I'm a fan of both in terms of boxing. I'm more a fan of Pacquiao. And so I was rooting for Pacquiao, but when the fight happened, I immediately said, I think Mayweather won. Now, there's a lot of videos that show otherwise, that show that Pacquiao may have won that fight. I still think he edged it out. It's just like the Danny Garcia and Keith Thurman fight. I was going for Danny Garcia, but I think Keith Thurman won that fight. I don't think there was a robbery. You know what I mean? Like if a fighter wins the fight, he wins the fight. I think I'm just a fan of boxing, man. I'm not into all the nonsense. I don't play the race cards or none of that stuff. Like for me, that's irrelevant. I'm mixed anyways. I'm black and Filipino. Most of you know this, but so for me, I've always grew up. I grew up on the northeast side of Los Angeles. A lot of Hispanics, a lot of Filipinos. A lot of Caucasians around here as well. So I grew up around a very mixed, mixed bag culturally. So I've never really been one to play the race card, especially when it comes to sports. I watch sports for sports. So, and boxing, especially for boxing, for the sweet science. And so, going back, I say all that just to say, like, I'm just not one of those individuals. I'm not here to defend, some dudes I don't really know like that. They're fighters that I'm a fan of, but I'm not a, super fanatic, I'm literally a fan of boxing. And so I think I could call it, call a spade a spade. I'm human. I make mistakes, just like I thought that Genaddy Golovkin was going to wash him. I think the rehydration, again, played a big factor in that, but that's neither here nor there. Danny Jacobs did what he felt he had to do. I don't feel like it was, the most honest move, but, he showed up for his fight, put on his performance, didn't get the straps. And I think a lot of people have to really understand, like, going back and really, really looking at the fight, the question is always, especially if a guy has spent all that time acquiring those belts, and it's the same question I asked again for Sergey Kovalev and Andre Ward, did he do enough to take those belts? And I don't think so. I don't think so. Like I said, he did well in spots. I think Gabe Rosado said it best. It was just like, you're a puncher, bro. All this talk about Genaddy Golovkin's 23, knockouts in a row, give or take. I may be wrong on that, but all those knockouts. Danny Jacobs had the same hype going in. He was a boxer puncher. He just knocked out 12 in a row by KO. Right? Nobody knocked out anybody, but one did get knocked down. One was against the ropes the whole fight. One did look worse after the fight than the other. And I think these are things that you have to, take into consideration. I mean, this is the same guy who just knocked out Peter Quillen, who, isn't like the most elite fighter, but he was known to be a puncher himself, knocked him out in the first round. Couldn't do it to Genaddy Golovkin. So I think while we're trying to sit here and hype Jacobs' ability to survive 12 rounds. You know what I mean? Because he didn't die in the ring, it looks magnified, right? Compared to what Triple G, who's used to annihilating dudes, he didn't annihilate him, but he did beat the guy in 12 rounds, and we diminish how great that was. Anyways, I'd love to hear what you guys think. You know, feel free to comment, and if you're, you know, if you believe Daniel Jacobs won, you know, feel free to put it in the comment section. I have no issues, you know, looking at other ideas and perspectives. You know, just try to keep it respectful, because, you know, I'm not going to really sit here and go back and forth with any nonsense. You know, even if it's like, you know, Boxing Ego or anybody that, you know, hears these clips, you know, feel free, you know, to respond. You know, I'm very respectful of boxing, and I'm not here to, you know, like I said, just defend people, because I'm open to hearing other perspectives and talk boxing. So, anyways, thank you guys for listening. You know, I might do a video on the Chocolatito robbery. We're going to call it that, because that's what that was. And, you know, we'll take it from there. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe it. If you're in any boxing channels, make sure you share this video. You know, the more, you know, subscribers we get, the more listens we get, the more, you know, we'll go ahead and, you know, keep putting these videos out. I'll try to keep them a little bit more consistent, like I've said before. And we'll take it from there. But, you know, like I said, like the video, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you know that when new videos are put up, you can go ahead and check those out. And also check out the website. That's www.goldminds.com. That's GoaledMinds.com. All right, guys, this is JU. I'm out. Talk to you guys later. Peace.